What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Full Service with Mr. Full Service. Got a little something I want to show you guys. This is Stephen Petty. He is one of the world's most aforementioned industrial hygienists. The reason why I want you to see this video is this man, like I said, aforementioned industrial hygienist. If you don't know what an industrial hygienist is, those are the people who actually tell doctors, hospitals, and things like that PPE protocols, operational controls. Basically, if they have an outbreak of any kind of virus, industrial hygienists are usually the first people that you talk to because they're going to be the ones to teach you or tell you how to stay safe. So, right now, they are talking about reinstating lockdowns. There was supposedly a government document that was leaked saying such. Now, you also have colleges like the one down in Georgia that's already switched back to their COVID protocols, which includes masking and social distancing. Then you also have some Hollywood studios doing the same. So they're starting to push this out there. Then you have Joe Biden actually telling people that they need to watch out for this new variant that's coming out and go ahead and get your booster shot. So, but I'm not going to get into that right now. What I want you to do is be able to hear what Dr. Petty is saying about these masking. So, from almost jump, the whole masking thing never made sense to me. Neither did the social distancing, especially because we're talking about aerosolized particles. We're talking about a virus that travels through aerosolized particles as opposed to droplets. Now, if we were talking about droplets, that's a lot bigger. And yeah, the mask would stop some of that. But I'll let Dr. Petty kind of explain it. So let's hear what he got to say.
So what's come out? On January 2nd, 2022, which is pretty recently, Scott Gottlieb, former FDA chief, said on CBS's Face the Nation that basically a cloth mask is not going to protect you from the airborne virus. Specifically, he was on the show and he was asked by the host Brennan, "What do you tell parents? Aren't cloth masks good anymore?" This was his response. Cloth masks aren't going to provide a lot of protection. That's the bottom line. This is an airborne illness. We now understand that. Of course, we've understood that for a long time. And a cloth mask is not going to protect you from virus that spreads through airborne transmission. It could protect against droplet transmission, something like the flu, but not this coronavirus.
All right. So let me break that down for you. This is the CDC telling people that no, the masks that we're wearing, surgical masks, cloth masks, even your N95, they're not really going to protect you. We thought at first that this was being transmitted through droplets. They've known for a long time it wasn't transmitted through droplets. They knew that it was aerosolized particles and that your cloth and your surgical mask, even your N95, did little to nothing to stop it because viruses, like these small viruses, are going to go through the creases, the openings of your mask, and they are so little, they are so small that they're just going straight through a cloth or a surgical mask. But we've said this for a long time. Nobody wanted to hear it. You've been wearing a placebo on your face, and the government knew it. Let's keep going.
Well, we've heard that droplet argument before from CDC, and we know that over 99% of the particles are aerosols or less than 5 microns. So we're not going to get fooled by that droplet argument anymore. It's really aerosols. So the truth is leaking out. Cloth masks will not protect you from viruses like COVID, which are small, and the masks might stop bigger droplets, but they're a small fraction of the problem, and they fall right to the floor. They don't stay suspended, and they don't reach deep into the lung. And we've known this for decades. I mean, we've known it from flu and from using the masks in hospital settings that they don't stop infectious diseases. The other thing that just came out was a January 2022 report from England Department of Education, suggesting the masks don't seem to work. And the BBC headline was the government admits that evidence for using masks in schools to reduce the spread of COVID is inconclusive, meaning they can't prove that it works or don't work. And what did they do? They looked at 123 schools where masks were used and they compared that to others where they weren't used. And this is the title page of that particular report. Um, and what did they do? It was a little different study. What they did was they started the study in October of 2021, and what they looked at was the reduction time in absences related to schools where masks were worn and they weren't worn. And they found a reduction in time for the people that wore masks of 2.3 points or percentage points, and in schools where they didn't use them of 1.7. But the key statement is that those differences are not statistically significant, meaning that they couldn't prove masks made a difference in terms of absentee rates. The other thing that was really interesting in this paper, and I've touched on it in other podcasts, but I want to bring it forward again, is that masks are harmful actually to children. They note that 94% of the secondary leaders and teachers thought that wearing face coverings had made communication between teachers and students more difficult, and 59% said it made it a lot more difficult. And they noted that the wearing of the face coverings has physical side effects. We've talked about those, impairs facial identification, impacts verbal and nonverbal communication between the teacher and the learner. They also said that the inability to see facial expressions and read lips has a major impact on speech understanding for those with hearing impairments. The worse the hearing, the worse the impact of wearing a mask. And that concealing the speaker's lips results in lower performance, lower confidence scores, increased perceived effect on the behalf of the listener. So, again, these harmful effects are leaking out as more and more work's being done to look at the negative impacts, if you will, on learning in schools. The English guidance is a little bit different from over here. Interestingly enough, their guidance says that children under age 11 should be exempt from the requirements of wearing face coverings. So nobody under 11, including education, and they do not uh, recommend face coverings for anybody under age 3 for health.
Let me say this: the masks, once again, do not do anything to slow down COVID. It's aerosolized. Not to mention, let's be real, children are not going to wear their masks properly. Heck, you can hardly get adults to wear their masks properly. You'll have them all under their nose. Then they'll put their surgical mask on, and they'll have this one surgical mask all day. They'll put it on the table when they're eating and things like that. That is now contaminated. I saw a guy sit there and actually was talking about he was mad at me for not wearing a mask. And he has had this surgical mask on so long, the straps, the white straps are black. The front of it is so fuzzed out because of where it keeps on pulling on the front of his mask. And I'm sitting there like, in my head, I'm just like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You were really upset at me for not wearing a mask while you wear that placebo diaper on your face and get contaminated. But you can't tell these people that. They were so afraid. So afraid. Not to mention that every time he spoke, he pulled his mask down. That's you can't make this stuff up. Huh.
Health and safety reasons. An interesting comment. Um, Although what's interesting is, despite this lack of science-based evidence, we still had the chief medical advisor for the UK Health and Safety Agency, Susan Hopkins, say we support them reintroducing face masks. This is with the new COVID stuff. So never mind the science, we still want to put those face masks on our kids. And my comment is, shouldn't this be done by an industrial hygienist rather than somebody who's a medical advisor who probably doesn't really have any health and safety background or not very much? I also want to touch base with you on the so-called dummy dots. This is in my earlier podcast where I've stated over and over again that I could never find a basis for the 6 foot rule, and CDC has constantly changed their defense of that 6 foot rule, and I'll show you some of the things that they've done. But again, our good friend Scott Gottlieb here, back in October or September 19th, actually said something interesting. Basically, said nobody knows where this came from, and of course, this is consistent with what I've been saying on my podcast and to others privately for over a year and a half. I can't find the science that defends that number. And he says, quote unquote, nobody knows where this came from. Most people assume the 6 foot distance, the recommendation for keeping 6 feet apart, comes from some old studies related to flu, where the droplets didn't fall more than 6 feet away. And he made a very interesting comment when you think about all the spacing and all the dots and the lines and everything that are put in stores and everywhere to keep people separated. He says the 6 foot rule is probably the single costliest recommendation that CDC made. The whole thing feels arbitrary and is not science based. Now, I know some of the criticism on the internet about Gottlieb is, well, he worked for the former president, so he's a right wing zealot or whatever. But um, I suspect that he's telling the truth. I do want to share with you, just to be complete, a little bit of the history on the 6 foot rule, or what one might go back and look to see if there are any rules, period. The WHO had a 3 foot rule for decades. It was based on 1930s work by William Wells out of Harvard. And he was studying tuberculosis and found that droplets, bits of spit, mucus, sputum, phlegm, emitted when he breathed, coughed, or sneezed, tended to land within 3 feet of where it was expelled. Again, these are droplets, not aerosols. So that we didn't have a 6 foot rule, and we didn't have a 3 foot rule at the time. Now, recall that the 6 foot rule came into play at CDC. It's been there for a long time. Then in August of this year, they they cited this paper defending the 6 foot rule, and then most recently, and I won't go into it because of the length of the podcast, they've gone back to a 3 foot rule. Of course, you don't see 3 foot markers in stores. In fact, you don't see hardly any markers anymore at all. Um, so they cited a paper by Liu et al. On the basis for this 6 foot rule. Um, and so I thought it'd be interesting to look at that actual study, because I think you'll see that it doesn't have. When I did a word search of this document, I never found anything referencing 6 feet in any of the papers. In fact, it's all in metric. Here's a picture of the situation that they described real quickly. They had in the yellow dot a sick individual sitting around a table. This was in like a restaurant or eatery. And they had other people around the table and then in adjacent tables. And this space is a total of about 5 meters by 6 meters, or about 16 feet by 20 feet. And the circles where there are red circles around the uh, designated individuals are people that got sick as a result of being next to A1. And what's curious is that the people that got sick were within 6 feet, but they were also much further than 6 feet, almost 10 to 12 feet away. And what's really curious about this is if you look on the right, you'll see that the air conditioning system with its arrows pointing towards the space would be, you would think, blowing the air, if you will, away from A1. And yet somebody at C2 and C1 got sick. So, first of all, there's no reference. In fact, this is all in metrics. So there's no reference to 6 feet in this study. And secondly, it certainly doesn't show 6 feet have anything to do with infection rates. And I would argue, as you read the details of the paper, it has a lot to do with the lack of appropriate ventilation. Um, what's interesting is that there was some work done by folks at MIT that also looked into this last summer. And I just cite a little bit of their work. They said specifically that the 6 foot rule, a guideline that offers little protection from pathogen bearing aerosol droplets, aerosols. And above all, our study makes clear the inadequacy of the 6 foot rule in mitigating indoor airborne disease transmission. So there has been some work done looking at the 6 foot rule. It says it doesn't work. Work out of MIT. And in all of my reviews in the last probably 12 to 16 months, I've never found justification for the 6 foot rule, and to this day, it doesn't exist, to my knowledge. So it was refreshing to see Gottlieb say, "Well, we basically made it up. Didn't have any basis in science." Again, the key solution, and what I've said over and over again, is the real key to actually controlling exposures is to use inhalation, to use engineering controls of dilution and destruction, and we've talked about that at length. Hope you've enjoyed the podcast.
All right. So that right there is Stephen Petty. Like I said, industrial hygienists. Those are the guys who usually are the ones at the forefront of outbreaks and things like that. But so weird that COVID and things like that were not. You had frontline doctors. And what's crazy is they would actually deplatform anyone with a dissenting opinion. And these are medical professionals. And you had social media giants, like I said, social media and White House officials absolutely censoring doctors. And now it turns out that those doctors and those industrial hygienists were telling the truth. They were right. COVID was aerosolized, not in droplets. Told people that, hey, your masks are not doing anything for you. As a matter of fact, they're probably doing more harm. If you actually go to the NIH and look at these different studies, you will see that putting masks on actually did more harm than good, especially when it came to children. Children who had such a minute chance of getting bad COVID. Yet here we are putting these diapers on their face, these placebos that did nothing for them. Said that the 6 foot rule was bunk. It never made sense. Do you know how long aerosolized particles remain in the air? Yeah, it's not a second, let me tell you that. They literally could hang up there for hours. So if somebody had COVID and they start sneezing, guess what? That's coming out every flipping part of that mask. And it's aerosolized, just waiting for the next person to come right up and breathe it in. I'll say this again. If people comply this time to this masking nonsense, this social distancing nonsense, this lockdown nonsense, then you deserve everything that's coming to you. Absolutely. If you allow these government entities to scare you into these lockdowns again, you deserve everything that's coming to you. This is nothing more than an attempt to really circumvent the election. That's what this all comes back down to. And y'all can call me a conspiracy theorist if you want, because I'm going to tell you now, I've been called a conspiracy theorist so many times in the last couple of years, and every single one has come true. Yeah, my pronouns are I'm right. It's crazy. So, anyway, well, that has been the full service with Mr. Full Service. We are going to do some more videos like this with Stephen Petty, because he has a lot of information. If I had a chance to speak to him, I probably talk to him about his delivery a little bit, but it's okay. The information that he's given you is valid, absolutely valid, and he has other videos on his YouTube channel. You can check him out, the Petty Podcast. So, all right, y'all. Like I said, this has been the Full Service with Mr. Full Service. Come check us out on Simply Sunday every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, and Facebook. Also, check us out on the Trifecta Hour. As a matter of fact, Trifecta Hour this week is a very special show. This will be our last show on TikTok. We are moving the platform. We are moving the show onto YouTube and Rumble, Twitter, Facebook. And yeah, I can't wait. I can't wait, because on TikTok, you're not able to really show videos. You're not able to show receipts. you're not able to show where you're getting your information from. So, with moving all, and plus, you have to be really censored in what you say. So, moving off platform, that's going to open us up to all new possibilities. And I cannot wait. I'm telling you, I absolutely cannot wait. So, like I said, the Trifecta Hour show every Friday, last show on TikTok. From now on, you can come check us out on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Twitter, maybe even Twitch. I don't know. We'll probably end up on Twitch. I don't. We'll see how that goes. But please, please, please like and share the video. Go follow us across our social media platforms. Follow Mr. Full Service. Like I said, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, YouTube, Rumble. You can find Mr. Full Service. And the Trifecta Hour. Follow us across our platforms. Because I'm telling you now, you're definitely wanting to see what's coming up. Cool? Cool? Everybody all right? All right. Well, thank y'all for joining us in.
Artlist.io. Music licensing reimagined.
Your power